Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lindsay Humphreys, and I'm the Program Director for Junior Achievement of New Mexico. You are attending our virtual career speaker series today, and this program is open to JA students across New Mexico, and we highlight business professionals, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers from a variety of industries. Each of our featured speakers will share details about their education, their job, and their career journey. But before we get started, we're going to just do some virtual meeting etiquette reminders. This recording will be posted onto our YouTube channel for anyone who was unable to attend the event today. So when you get the link in your follow-up email, just remember you can send that to whoever would like to watch the presentation. At this time, if you could please write your first and last name into the chat box. And then if you're an educator and you have students on the call, or if you're a parent and you have students on the call with you, please just let us know how many students there are behind your icon. And so then finally, during the speaker's presentation, please make sure all of your mics are muted. If you have questions during the presentation, you can feel free to type them into the chat box, or there will be a time when you can unmute and you can ask the question live. So today we are so excited to welcome Rachel Moore. She is the Curator of Exhibitions and Digital Content Manager for Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. And this is going to be the wrap-up event for our Career Speaker Series this fall. So Rachel, go ahead and share your screen, and we can get started.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the introduction. Again, Rachel Moore, Curator of Exhibitions at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. I've been working there for coming up on 4 years now, so I feel like I'm pretty young to be giving career advice because I feel like I literally just graduated. So it's kind of cool to be able to do a reflection about like where I've come from and maybe inspire some of you guys about kind of the field of museums and arts and culture. So I just kind of wanted to start by just kind of giving you the idea of kind of what shaped me into the career that I've been doing. And I'm really going to highlight a little bit more about opportunities, because I look back and I would say the reason I am where I am is because I've taken full advantage of a lot of the opportunities that have been placed in my lap, forced or just optional. So the first one really I want to highlight that kind of started me on the path of looking at culture as a career was when I was really, really little. I was 4 years old when my entire family was moved to Israel, the country. And I spent 2 years there, so I was really little. I was able to start kindergarten. We were able to visit Egypt and Cyprus and London and just all these different places. But the biggest thing for me was that I went to an international school where I was able to be friends with so many people from so many different backgrounds. And I just really loved that everyone was unique and had their own perspectives, their own holidays that they celebrated. And that was something that really impressed me as a young child. That I was just like, wow, it was really cool to see that variety. So ended up back in the States for high school. I am native to this area, so Rio Rancho High School in Rio Rancho is where I graduated high school. My funny fact is my permanent address has pretty much always been my parents' house there in Rio Rancho, but I graduated in 2010, so it's 10 years ago now. But some of the opportunities I had in high school, my biggest thing was music. And I feel like a lot of people talk about how music was a part of their career path and everything, because it was something to be dedicated to, but also just opened opportunities to visit other places. You know, we did traveling stuff to, you know, Allstate and traveling for band competitions outside of the state. And it was just a really great way to like become friends and see other people and just have that consistency in high school. I loved the bassoon. Most people don't know what a bassoon is, but I'm the youngest of 6 children. And so all of my 5 siblings were in band. So it was almost wasn't a choice by the time I got there, because it was like band was my life. I was actually going to share a picture of me when I was really little. I was barely a year old, and I was in the Cibola High School's jazz band funny picture from 1993. And, that's the way it was. I always was, going to concerts. And so, as a young kid in elementary school, I was like, oh, whatever, these concerts are boring. But by the time I got into middle school, it was just kind of like, well, what would my life be without it? The other things I did in high school was photography. And that's something that really shaped where I went in the future. I really enjoyed art. So I joined in some art classes in some of my free periods. And I was really intrigued because Rio Rancho High School, it was actually the end of the days. I don't even know if they do it anymore, where they had a black and white photography lab. So actually like developing film and prints. And I just loved that, like chemical processes and everything like that. So like that photo of the Converse All-Star shoe was something I photographed in high school. And, just taking that print from something, not digital, but really something very more mechanical that I thought was really cool. And then 2 other academic opportunities that I feel like I took a pretty decent advantage of, probably not as good as I could have, but the top picture, you'll see me and my friend Monica. That is actually a dual enrollment class with CNM. So they don't just have to be boring classes. They can be fun classes. We did, that was a salsa dance class. So that was 2 things for me. It was number 1, just experiencing more culture, and number 2, just getting extra credit for being in a fun class in the evenings during high school with a friend. The other thing, around high school is when I started to realize that I am brown. I have a cultural background that is a lot different than other people's. And there was an opportunity to participate in a summer program called Summer of Academic Refinement at Brigham Young University in Utah. And it's something that my sister actually went to when she's about 6 years older than me. So the program had been lasting for quite a while. But basically this program was a 2-week program where we went to campus in Utah. We lived in the dorms there. We made friends, and we spent 2 weeks studying, preparing, and then taking the SAT. And I thought that was a really cool opportunity to like actually focus on that, but also to make friends and connections, especially to people that would help me get into university. Because part of that training and stuff, we were able to make connections with the Multicultural Student Services. Summer of Academic Refinement, it's SOAR for short. It was run by the Multicultural Student Services. So it was really geared towards anybody that was multicultural, from African Americans to Asian Americans, Native Americans. So that was a fun opportunity to meet with a bunch of different people of different backgrounds, but also to get an academic piece completed at the same time, and actually get it done in time, because I am a master procrastinator and I did not take the SAT besides that one. So kind of a mistake on my part, but it actually led to something really cool. I ended up going to Brigham Young University. Like I said, my mistake of not preparing for the SAT, I only had the one SAT I took through that Summer of Academic Refinement program, which was exclusive for Brigham Young University. So I took that opportunity to at least apply to that school, and I got in. And my dream was to be a photojournalist using anthropology and to travel the world. And so I started out doing anthropology. And one of my first anthropology classes was archaeology. And that's when I learned archaeology is so cool. It's really dealing about people's stuff and analyzing people's stuff to tell a really cool story about people who can't tell their own stories anymore. But also through my time in university, I had to find ways to, find a place to live. I had to get a job. My first job was, it looks a lot funner than it is, but in this top picture, I was a custodian at the cafeteria, where all the freshmen go to. So I got to clean out all the grease from where all the burgers got made, and I had to clean the floors, and it was really gross. After I got that job, I stopped eating the burgers there just because I was like, it's so greasy and I'm going to have to clean it up later. But it was a really cool experience and got me my foot in the door to maybe continue working at university. I went on to be a teacher's assistant as well as working in the museum. But the other thing is, university is fun and it's time to explore different things. And again, just that cultural piece, local in the area of Utah, they celebrate, one of the mosques there celebrates Hare Krishna. And it was just a fun thing to go out and get chalk and throw it at everybody. So just taking opportunities like those just to enjoy your time, but also to, do some real work in the middle of all of it. A central piece of my time at Brigham Young University was actually this program called Remembering Our Culture. So university, the main reason I was able to go and to make it through college was all the support from Multicultural Services. They gave me a full scholarship for that, to be there for 4 years. And so it became a big part of learning about who I was and how I can do that. And so one of the last years I was there, I actually found this dance group. It's not affiliated with Brigham Young. It's actually just the area of Provo and Orem, and it's a college group. And we got together and practiced and performed songs and dances from 5 cultural backgrounds. So there was Latin, Native American, African American, Asian American, and Polynesian. So we got to learn different dances. You can see down there on the bottom, I learned a Chinese handkerchief dance. But being Native American, I had the opportunity to actually take part in the Native American dances, including learning how to do jingle and fancy dance. Those were things I always wanted to learn as a kid. And so it was really cool to find this dance group that was actually willing to teach me. Because there were other dance groups in school that you could audition for and get into, but I didn't know how to dance at all to begin with. So it was really cool to have a year to learn how to dance, but also, again, make more friends of different backgrounds. And then we were able to travel to DC and perform in Washington, DC, which was a really cool experience. After Brigham Young, I actually ended up going on to get a master's degree. It's another one of those situations where I look at and I would say the stars kind of aligned, but kind of took advantage of those opportunities that I had placed before me as far as what I was applying for. My degree was in archaeology with a minor in visual arts. And I was working in the museum at Brigham Young University, and I realized the museum is actually a really cool place to be as far as my cultural background, my educational background, and some place that I could see myself progressing in the future. But I also had the idea of, I really enjoyed osteology. So the study of bones and anatomy. So I actually looked more for a school that had a really cool archaeology program and a museum studies program. But the last day before applying, I chickened out of applying for the archaeology program and just applied for the museum program. And that actually worked out for me because after a year, I ended up getting married and having a kid, and just everything came together. And it was just okay, I'm done with school. I was burnt out from school. So I was able to spend time with family between all of that and make my connections to the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. And Indian Pueblo Cultural Center is actually who ended up giving me a job. So in all of my training through school, my training was really focused on objects and collections management. But I also, with a lot of those courses, I also had to learn administration and exhibits planning, which was also mildly interesting to me with my visual arts background. So Indian Pueblo Cultural Center was looking for a curator, and I was like, hey, I'm cultural, I'm from Hopi, and I have training. I don't have the 5 years of experience, but, I put in my application and said hey, I worked for you. I know how your exhibits plans work. Just, give me the opportunity to work for you and I can show you what I can do. And so they did. They ended up offering me the job, and that's where I've been for the past 4 years. But I also wanted to highlight the fact that, that journey is still not complete, because honestly, as cool as it is to have a job and to say like, oh yeah, I'm a curator, it's not really what my background was in and what I really love to do. I enjoy the painting and installing of exhibits. I really like the tangible work of what museums do and can offer. And so that's kind of leading me to what I've been working on recently. I've been continuing learning opportunities. I've been taking chemistry courses, which I avoided a lot through all of my other training and education, because I'm going to pursue a conservation degree. So I'm going to be able to go in, and this is a project that I worked on in Santa Fe. These are bronze sculptures. So they're metal sculptures that kind of get faded over time. And then once a year or maybe every other year, you kind of go in and refresh them with some more oil. So they're kind of refreshed and rejuvenated, and, that you can see the difference between, something that's almost starting to rust and decay to something that's vibrant, and it just looks so new. So I kind of tell people I am excited to go back to work directly with objects and to take things from a broken and fallen state to something of use, and to be pretty again and organized again. And I would say kind of overall, my past and looking through all of that, again, all those opportunities that were placed in my way, and that I took those opportunities, whether it was just, making it into a school barely, or, a dance group, that all of those opportunities culminated into finding out what I actually want to do. It took me a while to get to that point, because I feel like in college, I had that dream of photojournalism, and then that dream changed by the time I graduated to a dream of, being a forensic anthropologist, to now where I'm looking at doing conservation. And they're all in the same field. So it's kind of cool that museums are such a small field where you can dabble in so many different areas, but also that you don't have to get it right the first time. And I think the biggest thing for me growing up, especially being the youngest of 6, it was always the idea of like, I have to do this perfect. I'm going to get it right. When I left for college, I was like, I'm just going to get my degree in 4 years, and I'm going to finish this, and it's going to be perfect. But I've realized that nothing really is perfect. As much as you want to try to be a perfect human being, there are going to be shortcomings. And I came across this quote by G.K. Chesterton, and that's kind of been my mantra for the past couple months, especially since COVID hit, of just, if a thing is worth doing, it is worth doing badly. I kind of take that to heart, because I feel like I do a lot of things badly now, because I've just ran forward without thinking about what I'm doing. But it's okay to make those mistakes, and it's okay to, if it's something worth doing, you might as well do it. I think the example I heard somebody explain this to me was like brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is totally worth doing because it helps you keep your teeth. And so it's worth even 20 seconds of brushing your teeth as opposed to doing your full 30 seconds or 1 minute of brushing your teeth. So, the path I took to end up in cultural arts and museums was not a perfect one, but I think it was worth doing because I learned a lot of things along the way about myself and about the field in general. So that's my presentation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's great advice. So I'll get us started with a question that was asked via registration. So the first one is, what kind of training did you need for the job that you currently have?
So the job that I currently have, so there's 2 parts of my job. As you saw, my title has kind of been split recently. So Curator of Exhibitions, my training was in storytelling is really what it comes down to, storytelling as well as history. Most curators, they have degrees in art history or archaeology. So really training and understanding how to research and write things is a big part of what my main job is. So really just all that training through university of just learning how to research and write a paper is the biggest thing. The other half of my job is digital content manager, and that has been added on since we shut down. which I'm grateful that I actually had the background in photography and training in film and digital content. So I took a class on graphic design, so I know how to use the Adobe Creative Suite. I know how to photograph. I know how to video. And I've been able to utilize that for the other half of my job, which is digital content management. So those are kind of the biggest things, of just kind of taking advantage of those random classes that are just interesting, but they end up being really useful.
Thank you. Would anybody go ahead to unmute and ask a question, or you can write something into the chat box? Otherwise, we have a couple more questions that I could ask via the registrations. All right, so the next question, what has been your biggest influence?
Oh, that's a bigger question. And I think I didn't do a good job of saying this in my presentation. I would say my biggest influence is actually just recognizing where I came from, because that's become such a big part of my life's journey and my career journey. Being able to reflect on who I am and where I come from. Sorry, my throat was a little dry and I forgot my water, but reflecting on who I am, where I came from, and what I can offer specifically is really kind of the biggest influencer of where I've ended up going. Because I would say, you know, talking about being in elementary school, surrounded by so many different people of different backgrounds, you know, I didn't feel different. But when I went to college, and I was at a predominantly white college, I realized that people looked at me differently, and that they were like, oh, you're Native American? Like, that's so mystical and different. And I'm like, well, that's not really mystical and different. Like, it's just who I am. And, you know, I have these unique experiences that, you know, I can turn around and make useful in my career. You know, I was in a class once, and my professor sat down, and a friend of mine that was a cohort of mine, or a friend of mine that was in the class, he was the same age, same degree seeking, and he kind of sat down and was kind of talking about career paths. And he says, if you look at, you know, Trevor over there and Rachel over there, who's going to be the one that gets the job? That if they both apply for the same job, who's going to get it? And the answer was that I would most likely get it, because I'm a woman and I'm Native American. And so it was really taking ownership of those identifiers and making them useful for me, and making it useful for me to fit into my little niche of Native American cultural museums.
Thank you. A question from the chat. What was the worst thing that has ever happened while curating an exhibit? Have you ever broken anything?
So thankfully, I have not broken anything yet. So that's the other thing I guess I didn't say about training. We do pretty extensive training on object handling. And so putting up exhibits and everything is a really long and tedious process. The worst thing, I have one, well, I don't know, that's, like the first one that's coming to my mind of is kind of working with different people. So in curating and installing exhibits, I get to work with different printers and installers. And this one time, there was this guy that kept on calling me and bugging me and saying like, hey, you should use my business. Hey, you should use my business. I do vinyl installations and vinyl printing. And I'm like, okay, well, go ahead and try it. So I was going to get a huge picture that's like about 10 feet by 13 feet. So it would fill an entire wall. So I was like, okay, I want this done. And he's like, yeah, I can get it done. And as he's working on it, like, I don't see anything come in. I'm like, hey, where's my print? And he's like, oh, the guy has it. I was like, okay. And he's like, oh, I'm going to have to install it. And I was like, it needs to be installed yesterday. Like, I planned on it being installed yesterday. And he's like, sorry. The printer wasn't working the way I wanted. And anyways, he turned out being the most shady guy I have ever met. That wall was not, like, he literally just taped it to the wall, because usually like vinyl, when you install it, it's like a big fat sticker that's heat glued onto the wall. This guy didn't do that, and it was just super sloppy and it looked horrible. I feel like that was the worst thing for me, just because, you know, I took a gamble on somebody that I didn't know, and it kind of bit me in the butt, and there was no time to turn around from that. So I kind of made the best of what I could. I had my husband, who works in vinyl, also come in and kind of tweak it a little bit, but hard to come back from something like that when you're relying on other people. So I would say that's kind of the worst, well, not the worst thing, but one of the harder things about curating an exhibit is all the different people you have to rely on. I have lost something, though. So a lot of what I do, we don't have a super big collection of objects. So a lot of the stuff that I get for our rotating exhibits is on loan from people. So there's been a couple times, in fact, I'm still trying to hunt it down. I borrowed a pot from a coworker to put in a display case. And it's in a different place than I usually put it. But anyways, I didn't actually keep paperwork to keep track of where it was, because I assumed it was just like an educational pot, and it wasn't important to her. I was like, okay, like it's just filling a spot, so it's fine. She called me about 2 months ago and was like, hey, I was wondering where my pot was. It's like my great grandmother's. And I was like, oh no, I have not seen that thing in like a couple months. So I'm still hunting it down. It was in a case, and then the case got transferred to somebody else's care, and they pulled stuff out and dispersed it in different places. So anyways, that's kind of nerve-wracking. So I'm still in the middle of working on that.
Wow, so I love seeing the kids' eyes get really big. Yeah. Question from one of the teachers on the call: is the Cultural Center open for virtual field trips?
Not right now. And in fact, that's something that we're working on. So again, as my partial job as digital content manager, I am actually working with our education team to get some recordings of some of their tours, because they give different tours on like a age group level. So there's like a elementary, middle school, and high school tour that they're going to offer. But those probably will not be ready until like February or March. If they do happen, don't quote me on that. There's just a lot of other things going on. But the other thing I do highly recommend, especially for teachers, is our Indigenous wisdom curriculum. Or even if you're just home and your parents are trying to figure out what to teach you, you can visit our website, indianpueblo.org, and there's an Indigenous wisdom curriculum under our virtual programming. And it comes with lesson plans that are Pueblo based. So and they're fun ones too. For the winter, we have a lesson on Ristra time for elementary school. And it's just fun to learn on your own too. I tied my first Ristra I tied my first Ristra this year. And it's just really about learning about sorting and math. And then there's another one that's like cooking with fractions. And then there's one that's on reading or on running on the Pueblos and just the history of running and health and wellness. So there's some cool lessons on there.
Thank you so much. Final question, and then we'll start wrapping up. What has been the favorite place you have visited or traveled to?
Favorite place? This kind of ties into just that idea of, accepting who you are. In college, I wanted to go see the world. I really wanted to visit New Zealand and Japan and, all the Polynesian islands. That was kind of my favorite thing at the time. But the only places I was able to visit, in fact, the program I was in, archaeology, every other year, they take the students to a field school where they can go and dig and practice archaeology. Every other year, it's an international trip. But the year I was in there happened to be the year that it was a local trip, and it was just in southern Utah. So it wasn't very far away. And I was like, oh, this isn't super exciting. But that's also kind of the time period where my mom, that was one of the first times my mom took me back out home to Hopi. And I would say, honestly, that is actually one of my favorite places that I've ever been. As far as, as a kid, I wasn't able to enjoy some of those international travels I partook in. They were fun, and they are definitely fond memories, and I definitely would love to visit those places again. But there's something about just being at your center place, wherever that is. And so for me, knowing my cultural background and knowing why I do what I do is rooted and based on, my ancestors supporting me. It's really nice to visit those home places like that, even though I don't have a strong connection to those, but it's something about that place that's just peaceful and feels like home.
It's a great answer and a great way to close out our session for today. So thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you for the students that have been on the call with us today. But before we log off, just want to give a couple of announcements. So following the presentation, you will be asked to complete a post-program mindset survey. If you complete the survey by Friday, you'll be entered into a drawing to win a Dion's gift card. Thank you to Dion's, who has partnered with us to provide us with gift cards for these events. And then teachers, just make sure that if you have students on the call with you, that you send the link to them as well so that they could be entered into the drawing. So just so you all know, this is our last career speaker series for the fall semester. We're going to take the holiday break off. And then when we come back, we're going to start on January 20th. And their first one will be January 20th at 1 o'clock. And we will be welcoming Mike Silva, who is the founder and co-owner of Rude Boy Cookies and the co-founder and the owner of Albuquerque Tourism Factory. And so you guys can just keep an eye out for your emails, and you'll get those registration links. So thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you everyone on the call. And I look forward to seeing you all next year.
Thank you.